What were you dialed into over at LikeFolio in this particular part of the market?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've talked a lot about how much people are doing home renovations, changing what they have. The other thing that we wanted to look at today was, there's a lot of people that have high demand for building a new home. There's a lot of talk about building a new home, moving out of cities towards a little bit more suburban or rural environments. But on the other side of that coin, we're also seeing a pretty big and sustained rise in the number of people talking about their new home building project being delayed or canceled, postponed, and so on. And what that tells us, you can see the spike that happened right in the middle of March. It was relatively flat until then. And now we've plateaued at higher levels. And what that tells us is there's this weird combination going on where there is pent up demand for new homes and for building a new home, but there's also an added level of friction uh, that is very real. It's both from the government in terms of social distancing requirements of home builders that really slows down the progress of a house or even office space can be built out. But it's also the reality of not knowing exactly whether your job is essential, whether you're going to be returning to a job, how steady your paycheck is. All of those things factor in. And so we've kind of got this interesting dynamic where there's a lot of demand. People really want to build a home. They're renovating what they have. There's just a lot of activity in this area, but it's slowed down considerably by all of these external factors. And so it's kind of a tough market for these home builders to navigate because they see the demand, but they also see the problems that they have with delivering and the problems that they have with their customers pulling orders due to lost jobs or unsecure futures. So really interesting environment for everybody, a lot to figure out as we head into the summer months.
Andy, this is a really great way to look at the housing market. And the data here is pretty incredible, showing the upward momentum of not housing, but cancellations on housing. And I think it shows what we talk about on this network a lot, which is you can make interest rates zero, you can make lending as easy as possible, but the number one variable concerning owning or building or buying a new home is your job and uncertainty in that job, in the overall economy is causing people to hesitate. And this may be what lingers, right? Air travel. Some people, a big percentage is going to snap right back. But there's going to be, just like your chart is resting here at higher numbers, there's going to be people that uncertainty is going to make them to pull back from some of their, their purchases. And I think that's what your chart shows here is just uncertainty through the economy right now.
Yeah, it does. And there's a lot of pin action off of this. We saw Redfin talked about, they reported a 24% drop in the inventory of existing homes. And so when you were planning to build a new home and then now you cancel it, you're going to remove your existing home off of the market. And so there's so many moving parts to this. It's really kind of difficult to keep up with or figure out. But the bottom line is there is a lot of friction in the economy right now. And these high purchase, high ticket items, this is a major decision to decide to move or build a new house. Those are the ones that get most impacted and say, all right, we're not necessarily going to build that house this year. Let's take a year. Let's see how things turn out. Let's make sure our paychecks are secure. Maybe for now, we'll just head down to Home Depot or Lowe's or get on Wayfair and see what we can buy to make this existing place a little better. So I think that's a lot of what's going on in the economy, and it's gonna take a while to move its way through because, like you said, Kevin, I mean, it is a major decision to move homes, and people just aren't there yet in terms of confidence into the future.
Andy, this is just some anecdotal evidence from my own, social circle. I have a family member who had a rental property and then also an existing home that they were residing in. And throughout this crisis, they were actually able to sell both of them in a matter of like a week's time. The
Yep.
rental property, something they weren't able to actually, unload for, they tried last year and they just had no success. So is this tying into what you're talking about with kind of the Redfin report about the inventory of homes actually out there for sale for the demand that's there? There's just not a whole lot of homes to choose from, so the ones that are there are going really quickly.
Yeah, it's a combination of both. So you've got a 24% drop in inventory. That makes everything that's on the market a little more attractive. You've got people that do want to move, but that don't know that they can go through the full process of building. So they say, hey, instead of building this house and going through all of these regulations and being unclear on the timeline, let's look at what's out there and available, either on the for sale market as existing inventory or with their own home, improving that to the point that they don't necessarily need to move. So I think it's a combination of all of the above that's making those types of things happen. I think what you saw with your friend is very common for those who are committed to selling an existing home right now. There's a lot less that they're competing against, and there is a lot of demand out there for people who want to move or change homes. They're just not necessarily ready to go through a full build process and all that that entails.
Okay, so Andy, let's take this one step further then, because ultimately in the next block, we're going to look at Lennar. It's a home building company. Not going to ask you to comment on that particular company, but on this space as a whole, what it sounds like is you could have a housing market that clearly has the macro, overhangs and uncertainty, and of course, the overall economic uncertainty in terms of wages and jobs. That's going to, hurt big ticket items, as you said. But the housing market could actually end up, kind of holding in there for existing home sales and, switching to an existing home. And home builders could really suffer if there's not really that extra effort to go through the process. And also, as you mentioned, with some of the regulations and things that, different parts of the country have from the government slowing down the process, it becomes less and less attractive potentially if you want to move and you want to do it quickly to actually go through that process.
Yeah, that's it. I think it'll be very interesting to listen to some of these calls, the executives coming on here. I think that they're going to have a tough time giving any clear guidance whatsoever. And a lot of times that's what the stock's reaction is all about, is that, the guidance and the clarity that management has. I think according to our data, according to LikeFolio data, I would be surprised if home builders can produce any type of clear forecast because number one, they're trying to figure out how long it's going to take them to build and deliver these homes. Number two, their customer base is extremely skittish and more likely than ever to cancel an order. And so it'd be very interesting to see if any of those two topics surface in these calls as we move forward. I think it's more about, on a company by company basis, there's going to be some regional concerns, where they sell through and what those restrictions look like in those areas. But I think overall, the theme holds true across the country in terms of the consumer's just a little more skittish when you see either yourself or friends and family lose jobs and not sure what they'll be coming back to. It's just really tough to pull the trigger on a big purchase 9 to 12 months from now.
Kevin, I want to give you a chance to weigh in here as well. One thing we also know about how this, crisis has affected different areas of the economy is it's largely affected service-related jobs, a lot more entry-level jobs, and so, maybe this is going to have an impact too on what part of the market some of these home builders target. Is it an entry-level home? Is it a higher-end home?
Sure. I mean, there's so many things, right? I mean, there's going to be a section of this economy or the population of an economy that lenders are going to worry about. If you are in the hospitality business, if you're in the hotel business, if you're in the restaurant business, if you're in any of these businesses, if you're in airlines, travel, you're not going to look as good in terms of application for a loan because your business is uncertain. And I think the general theme of this segment is uncertainty in what it's done to the overall market. And you may end up, and the fear is you have the have and the have-nots. You know, the people that can afford to move and take advantages of these lower rates, maybe they did, but you may be running out of people willing to buy and purchase and make that big investment because, you know, buying a car, buying a house, those are big commitments, right? So I just think it's easy to come back and show improvement from zero, but how high do these how healthy do these businesses get? That's where the variable comes in, right? How much do they recover? The restaurant industry, what percentage does it get towards 100% recovery? It won't be 100, right? But it won't be zero either. It's going to fall somewhere in the middle as good restaurants do better and poorly financially run restaurants do worse. So I think we haven't gotten to the point where we're deciphering who's the winners and losers are and how close we get to that full recovery. But it's not going to be 100% for a while. And that's going to affect things like housing and autos and everything that you would purchase over time or with a credit report. So, I mean, there's a lot to go through here. And this housing data that LikeFolio gave us is fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Andy, we got to run, but I want real quick, if you could give me a thought on this. You guys are looking at all sorts of different trends. And obviously, there's been a ton of optimism in the recovery and the reopening. But trends like this are a little bit concerning. And so from all the different trends that LikeFolio is tracking, is there more of this sense of playing it close to the vest than maybe we're reading in headlines and a little bit more cause for concern?
Yeah, well, I think the takeaway for me is that the optimism of the past, I don't know, 15 or 30 days may have just swung a little too far, just like maybe the pessimism swung a little too far back in March. That's what we see, and it really impacts these high ticket items, these long buying process items like homes. That's where that uncertainty really comes into play, and I think that's where the consumer's hand is really shown and laid bare.